Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us once again at our Community Educational Civic Series. Please like, follow, share, subscribe, and of course, we have our new Instagram page at Weston Power. Please follow us for all the updates and everything that's going on. Tonight, and I am Terry Minor Spencer. Tonight we have my dear friend, Rep. Aerion Abney. He's going to be our guest today to educate us on some civic series so we can all have a full understanding of which way we are going. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Aerion, for taking time out of your day. I know you're busy. The 17th is approaching very, very quick. So I know you're busy. So if you don't have any questions, we can literally get started.
Let's do it.
Okay. So being as though the map changed and everything, now there is new district, you have new communities and everything. So for the people that may not know who is Aerion Abney, tell us a little about yourself.
Well, thanks. First of all, thank you, Terry, for putting this together and for inviting me. It's always good to see folks who were actually really, in the community who were doing work and creating spaces like this for, elected officials and people running for office to be able to have a platform to talk to folks because sometimes it's just not easy for us to do it on our
Right.
own. So we appreciate you and want to make sure we give you your flowers while you're here. So just a
Thank you.
little bit about me, my background. For those who do not know me, I am a social worker. A social worker by educational background. So I have a master's degree in social work from the University of Pittsburgh. I would like to tell people that I'm an untraditional social worker. I've never worked in like case management or in like a school social worker. Never done like the one-on-one social work. I've always looked at social work in more of a macro level, sort of big picture social work, where I focused on community organizing and social administration. And so I've worked my career. I tell people I live at the intersection of politics,
Hmm.
philanthropy, and now like civil rights and social justice, where I have worked in the past in my professional career as a legislative assistant for then State Representative Jake Wheatley, who represented the 19th district where I currently represent right now. And so it allowed me to be endeared to the community, to understand a lot of the neighborhoods that were in the 19th district at that time, and get
Hmm.
to know a lot of the community residents, the stakeholders, the community groups, and be of assistance through a legislative assistant position. And then I moved on and worked at the Poise Foundation, which is where I
Hmm.
first met you, Terry. We were
Yeah.
colleagues, and I was their program officer for about 3 years. For folks who don't know, Poise Foundation is the only African American owned and operated community foundation in the country, and it's right here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
was responsible for giving out over $1.2 million in grants in my time there to different nonprofit organizations all across Allegheny County who had a specific focus on working and supporting the Black community. And then I moved on to become the Pennsylvania Director of Special Projects for an organization called All Voting is Local, which
Hmm.
focused on election administration and voting rights work across the Commonwealth, which I'm sure we can talk about a little bit later. But my job there was really to protect people's right to be able to vote and to do everything that we can to expand access to the ballot for those who wanted to be able to vote. Um, and so for me, I tell people I take all those talents and, for me, I like to think that no matter what my position is, I feel
Hmm.
like I can lead from whatever that position is. And I just hold the title of being the state representative for the
Hmm.
19th district. And so it really is an extension of the work that I've done in my previous roles, the work I've done in communities, the work I've done as a social worker. And for me,
Hmm.
I've always looked at politics and social work and very as being very similar in the sense that I think that they're both helping professions, and that's how I went from social work into politics because I understand how policy actually impacts
Hmm.
people's everyday quality of life. And for me, I think elected officials, if they do their job the right way, are just social workers with just a different level of influence. And for me, I want to be able to use my position as a state representative that I am currently and hope to continue to be as leverage and a sphere of influence to change the realities of struggle for people because I know this from just my experience and talking to residents,
Hmm.
not just
Hmm.
when I'm running for office, but also in all my other roles, is that
Yeah.
we live in a Pittsburgh where people feel like they've been left out and left behind. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where we have folks who, half the people live like the Flintstones, and the other half live like the Jetsons. And a lot of times
Yeah.
the people who look like me live like the
Wow.
Flintstones because of a lack of access to opportunities. And so I want to, I'm using my position as state representative to to create more access to opportunities and resources for people who've never had them before.
Well, folks, he answered my second question, because my second question to you was, what can you bring to the table? But I want to comment on a couple things that that you
Sure.
answered. One, if people did not know about Poise Foundation, now they do. That's what I love to have these series, because we always learn something new. So I hope somebody took that seed. And also, you spoke on the social work into voting. And I want to comment on that voting area. And thank you so much for bringing up your prior job, because I remember when you were like 2.5 seconds away from getting into the county jail with absentee ballots, or you were talking to the warden, or you were talking to someone, the connecting with the Allegheny County Jail. And that was so important, because a lot of people did not know that when you're in the county jail, the rights that they have when it comes to voting. So I want to thank you so much for that, Aerion. Um,
Thank you.
my next, and like I said, my next question was, what do you bring to the table? And so literally you went from the office of rep, now he's the chief of staff, rep Wheatley. You came from there, then from social work, the voting and then policies, which is extremely important going into as being a state rep. So thank you so much for that. My next question to you, Aerion, is, Dan Deasy, which is was our state rep. He
Sure.
he has some really large shoes to fill when it comes to like our senior citizens. He's always had an open door policy. If you call his office, someone's going to pick up or call you back. How do you plan on either enhancing to that, or making sure nothing is taken away from just that open door policy or access to you?
Yeah, so I think you touched on a few things that I want to sort of respond to in that question. First off, Dan Deasy is my colleague now.
Yeah.
His seat on the House floor is a one or two rows behind me, and so we've already
Okay.
had multiple conversations on the transition between he and myself, and taking over parts of the 20th Ward, which is parts of the West End, like Wind Gap, Chartiers, and Sheridan. And like you said, like he has a presence over there, and so he's committed to helping to with that transition, to connecting me with the right resources and things of that nature, and being supportive of me and making sure that I'm successful in that space. And so you also touched on seniors, right? And so for me, I think when I talk about people who've been left out and left behind, it's also when people have conversations about what they want to do. Often people just assume seniors, when they turn a certain age, are already taken care of because of Medicaid or
Right.
Medicare, or they're in senior housing, and so they're good. But that's not necessarily the reality. And so I would say to all my seniors, I've been appointed to the Aging and Older Adults Committee up in Harrisburg.
Mhm.
That's one of the committees that I sit on top
Oh,
of the Urban Affairs Committee and Local Government Committee. And so I will be directly working on senior issues while I'm up in Harrisburg, and doing everything that we can to make sure we are addressing their needs and bringing resources back to assist them. And so that's part of my responsibility right now, and I take that very seriously. And then as far as being accessible, I consider, most people know um, that throughout my career, I've been accessible. I think I've been, people can reach me. Most people have my direct cell phone number, which
mhm.
folks who run for office, they say, don't give everybody your personal cell phone number. But I'm like, sometimes people need to get a hold of me through the bat line, and that's fine. And so, I will have an open door policy with my office, and my staff will have that as well. So I will be reachable. Obviously, folks can reach me directly through my office or through social media or other platforms. And then, we want to be out into the community. I don't want my staff or myself to just be sitting in the office all day. We
Yeah.
will be out at community meetings. We will be out, you know, talking to folks, knocking on doors, even
Mhm.
past the election cycle. We want to continue to engage the community, whether that is hosting events, doing town halls in certain communities,
Mhm.
and working with folks like yourself in the West End and going to White Lily, the church over there, to host forums and
Mhm.
events,
Yeah.
and things of that nature. So we're already thinking about how we can step outside of the physical four walls of the office and engage folks. But it takes having good relationships with folks like yourself, who we can organize and plan and get the word out in those communities. And you have my commitment that we will do that.
Thank you, Aerion. Thank you so much. And I want to tap on, you touched on it a little bit. So the communities that were added to your district
Mm-hmm.
is all of Sheridan and all of Chartiers and all of Weston.
So it's not all of West End. It gets really funny how they draw the maps, and they draw them by wards and precincts. I mean, you know this. So it's got part not all of Sheridan. So when you're going around Chartiers Avenue, and then you're going um, up towards like the high school, Langley. So it's got
Mhm.
back and around there, and then it's got parts of like where you go down
Oh,
Allendale Street towards Allendale Circle, and then it keeps going back a little bit towards like Wind Gap. So
okay.
I'd be happy to share the actual map with you, so you can share it with your viewers, so they can actually see like
Yeah.
down to almost the street where whether they're in my new district, or if they're still in Dan Deasy's district going into next year.
Okay. We will really, really appreciate that because, of course, that everyone is asking, which communities. So we will really, really appreciate that, Arion. Um, my next question to you is, right now, as you turn on the TV, um, women are being attacked. We are being attacked, and I don't want to even say just women and our health, our reproductive health care, but it's also the LGBTQ plus community is being attacked. Our youth are being attacked. What can be done at a state level? Um, to reassure reassure your communities that you have their back on some of the things that are happening in our country right now.
Yeah, well, we have a sad history in our country and in state government here in Pennsylvania of government using its bully pulpit to bully folks who were not in any majority, right? And so
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
this is not this is not new tactics by those who were in power in state government. This is just very much more like in your face, because we have all the
yeah,
different mediums in which we can find out, like, oh, I didn't realize there's people in state government who don't want women to have access to healthcare, or want to take away women's
yeah,
right to choose, or want to
yeah.
suppress youth, or suppress folks with the LGBTQIA community. And so this
Hmm.
isn't new. It's just it just looks a little bit different. And so I think it is really important that we are sending to Harrisburg strong leaders who are not uncomfortable and are not afraid to stand up and be the voice for the folks back home in their districts and across the Commonwealth, who often feel like their voice is not heard in
Yeah.
state politics and in state government. It's important that you have somebody that when you're not able to watch everything that they do on an everyday basis. You have
Hmm.
confidence to say, hey, I voted for Aerion Andrew Abney for state rep because he believes in a lot of what I believe in, and he has similar values and morals. So when I know there's an issue around LGBTQ in Harrisburg that's going on, or if I know there's an issue around Republicans trying to take away a woman's right to choose, that I know
Yeah.
Ariana is pro-choice, and he's not going to waver on that. I know he's pro LGBTQIA community, and so I know I have the
Hmm.
confidence in him that he's going to be a champion and an advocate for my issues, and he's going to do everything he can to bring resources back to protect us, and he's going to do everything he can to try to promote and push policies that protect us as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that because like I said, that's every conversation is that we're scared. People is literally scared um of what we're seeing. And what I do like is it is, we use fear as our motivation. So that's a plus. That
Hmm.
is a plus. We're not using fear to silence us. So that is a plus right there. Thank you so much for that. Um, Now I had read that there has been 14.3 million awarded to 5 projects in your district. And so, Aerion, can you help us? What would they be, and how would that be this divvied out, and what can the communities look forward to with that?
Yeah, so that was $14.3 million in state funding that's directly coming to my district. But I will be in full disclosure, I can't take full credit for it. It was announced
Hmm.
literally the week that I was sworn in, and so a lot these things happen sort of years in advance. And so I wanted to give a lot of credit to at the time State Representative Jake Wheatley, who advocated for this, as well as State Senators Wayne Fontana and Jay Costa for their leadership on bringing the money back into the district. It just happened that when the announcement happened, I was in office, so I was able to make the announcement. But um, so there at the state, there's millions of dollars that go all across the Commonwealth
Hmm.
for like regional for our regional asset program, where our tax dollars that we pay on a regular basis get reallocated to different organizations and projects, mostly development projects that happen in our communities. And so this was an announcement that I made of $14.3 million to my current district. So those folks who are in Northview Heights or in West End, you would have to look to see what Dan Deasy announced in terms of how much
Hmm.
state dollars came in from that RCAP program into your neighborhoods. But for me, there were a few things, like there were a few development projects for like mixed use housing and commercial space that got awarded.
Hmm.
One of them got awarded like $10 million for over here in Manchester, where I live on the north side. And then we had our local YMCA got money for to renovate their building because their building is very, very old. And then we had some projects on the south side as well that got some funding. And so this is something that happens pretty often, that organizations can apply for, and those who do like physical brick and mortar development can apply for it, and the state has resources once you apply for it to potentially get you awarded for those fundings. And so my role as state representative, similar to what Representative Wheatley did before me, is to, when those opportunities come around, to let
Hmm.
organizations know, hey, this is available, this is the process in which you can get funded, and then once the application is submitted, I can be your champion and your advocate to the folks who actually approve those grants and those awards, to actually make sure that that money comes back to you all and back to the district. And that's what I will do.
Thank you so much, Arion. I wanted to. I was hoping that you will break down, exactly how that works. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm hoping that our listeners grasp that, took that seed, because that's very important to understand. How money gets allocated into our communities, and so thank you so much for breaking that down for us. A couple more questions for you.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
so my right now, there's plenty organizations. Um, I think when I had you on before, I think you answered this, but I don't know if the Senate Bill 835 was out at this time. But there's a Senate Bill 835 that's tied into Senate Bill 135, and it talks about our senior citizens and being incarcerated in our in people that have illnesses. You know, the good thing is that the people on both sides of the aisle are literally talking about this and caring about this topic right here, that is so important to all of us, because it goes into the millions when a senior is on medication. And so I want to ask you your stance on, I don't want to say on criminal justice reform, because that's as big as the sky. That's as big as I want
I
to
can I can
talk.
I can I can touch on it though, because I'm getting ready to introduce some legislation around criminal justice reform. But I do want to answer your specific question. But I would love to
Okay.
talk about the bill that I'm getting ready to introduce. It would be an exclusive. I haven't told anybody. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to tell it publicly, but I'm gonna tell
Uh,
it anyway, and
this,
ask for
this
forgiveness
is
later.
why. Okay, this is why I love to have these civic series. We learn something new every day. So, yeah, specifically, before you educate us on that,
Sure.
specifically, I want to talk about our senior citizens, and the people that is, literally aging and dying while incarcerated. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, Senator Street from Philadelphia, he was the one who first, brought it into legislation. Aerion, at a state level, what would be your stance with our senior citizens in incarceration?
I support any legislation that looks at, especially when we talk about our seniors, that
Mhm.
and understand this, when folks are in jail, doesn't mean that we are allowed to treat them like any less of human beings, right? And so when people have medical conditions outside of jail, we make sure that we have hospitals that can appropriately take care of them. So if people have medical conditions, and just because they're in jail doesn't mean that they should be, treated any differently. They should be given the care that they are needed to deal with
Mhm.
whatever ailment that they have. And so I would 100% support any legislation, any bill that comes across my desk that looks at how we can create better environments and conditions for folks who were in jail, who are dealing with different ailments, to ensure that they get the care that they need. And even if that means that they may need to be taken out of the jail to get that care under
Right.
the appropriate supervision, so they can get taken care of, and then go along with whatever the remaining process is. But we just need to do a better job at understanding jail was designed to be reformatory, right? But oftentimes the way that we are doing it is
Yeah.
more like purgatory for people. And so we need to get back to what the intended goal was, and that includes making sure that folks who are seniors who have different health issues and complications while they're in jail are not devalued, and they get the medical care and assistance that they deserve as human beings. So
Wow.
that's my yeah, that's my
No,
stance
go,
on
go.
that. I will 100% support that. And then I did want to sort of just plug that I will be introducing as a state representative. It will be my first ever, because I just was sworn in on April 26th. I'm running for re-election on May 17th, so a lot has been going on. But this will be my first ever prime sponsorship of legislation around criminal justice reform, where it is the criminal justice data collection program, which
Hmm.
would require our criminal justice sort of institutions that interact with each other, like our jails, like our police force, like our court system, to track non personal identifying information about the folks who interact with our system at every phase of the system. So collecting their age,
Mm.
collecting their race, collecting whether their gender, collecting the time in which, the dates in which they were interacting with these systems, to better document the experiences of people through data, their experiences of people throughout our criminal justice system, to ensure
Mm.
that folks who may get arrested for the same crime aren't treated
Hmm.
differently, right? So if a black person gets arrested for a crime, the same type of crime that a white person gets arrested for,
Hmm.
that black person isn't sitting in county jail for a month while the white person
Wow.
gets released on bail after 2 days, right? And we know
Yeah.
the implications of what happens when people sit in jail because they can't pay their restitution or their bond or their
Yeah.
cash bail, right? Or somebody who gets arrested for the same crime, is black, gets a harsher sentence than somebody that has, the same crime, that isn't black. And so we are requiring, so most of our these institutions kind of collect this data, but it's not universal across all of our counties. We're going to mandate that every county, every police force, every county jail, every court system documents this data, so that we can, every year we can put out a report to say, hey, look at what the data is telling us, that black people
Hmm.
really are being treated differently than everybody else. They're in
Yeah.
pretrial detention longer. They're getting harsher sentences and whatnot. So now we can use this data to reorganize and redo our laws, because we know that our laws aren't really conducive to certain people. So I'm proud to introduce this legislation within the next 2 weeks. I'm hoping that folks across Commonwealth, bipartisan, will sign on to this to co-sponsor this, and hopefully we can get this passed into law so that we can have a better representation of the data of how the experiences of anybody who interacts with our jail system, what that looks like, and so we can ensure that no matter who you are being treated just as fairly as everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? It goes right back. And thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. We got the firsthand information. We were the first to hear it here at the West
Exclusive,
Empower.
yeah.
Yes, yes. Community Educational Civic Series. So thank you so much for that. And Aerion, it goes right back to, like you was saying, jails were made to for rehabilitation. And that data will show how many people have got out, stayed out, paying, now they're paying taxes. They're giving back to their communities. That data is extremely important. So I'm sure that will be on both sides of the aisle. Because it's literally common sense. It's literally, and why we haven't had that, probably because it just makes too much sense. But thank you so much for that, because that's definitely needed. And thank you so much for your commitment with Senate Bill 835 with our senior citizens. Even looking at that and hearing more about that. So thank you so much for that, Aerion. And I have been asking you, various different questions. We've been going in various different lanes this evening. So can you explain to us actually what is the duties of a state rep? What can you do and what can you not do?
Yep. So I will give you two sort of like lanes of this. So I'll give you the technical requirements by law of a state rep. It's because people probably don't know this, and it's so minimal that it probably will frustrate you to know, like the type of compensation that state reps get for the amount of legally required work that they're supposed to do in a full-time legislature. But then I'll give you the reality of kind of the things that we actually do beyond that. So technically, by law, the only responsibility that we have is to pass a budget, is to vote to pass that. If we are required by law to make sure that the budget is passed each and every year. Now,
and that's the budget that we were talking about, the 14.3, that budget.
No, so that is just funding from a specific program within the larger state budget. So the overall state budget, every year it goes up with the cost of living and things like that. But the overall state budget is roughly over $35 billion that the state has in its budget to allocate back out to the Commonwealth every year. And in fact, we have this year, as we're going into budget season, and I will be voting on this come June. June 30th is when we have to pass the budget every year. We actually have received more dollars than we expected when we passed the budget last year, right? So I want to say, I'll double check this. There's roughly in total about $9 billion in revenue on top of what we projected to have, right? So when we have these conversations about there's all these needs in our communities around social services and around education and around making sure that our transportation system and our infrastructure and our roads and bridges, we have a budget where there's billions of dollars of surplus that are sitting in a fund collecting interest, but there are folks in the majority party that don't feel like we need to spend that money because that's not kind of what they stand for, right? And so just know that elections have consequences. When folks aren't voting and folks aren't, I know you're a nonpartisan, entity and organization, but it's important that we have folks who are in office that we are electing at the state level, both in the state house and the state senate, that will look at that $9 billion surplus and say, we can't just sit on that money. People have real issues and real needs today. We need to be putting that back into our communities, right? And so, we're getting ready to head into that budget season starting January 1st, and we're supposed to pass the budget by January 30th. And I will continue to advocate and push that we pass the budget on time, that we put more money into our social service programs, our human service programs, into senior care, into our education, our infrastructure, into making sure that we have more opportunities for jobs to go out, to ensure that we are providing state resources to small and minority and women-owned businesses so they can build their capacity and hire more folks locally. These are the important values and issues that we care about, or at least that I care about, people in my district care about.
Yeah.
And so I will continue to advocate for that. So that's part of the things that a state rep can do. But also, and I know I'm going a little bit over time, but I also want to, but this is
No,
critical
please,
that people
please.
know this, that a state rep has the ability to assist residents in any state facing or state related office or department that they may be having issues with. So if people are having issues with their driver's license,
Yeah.
they need to get their driver's license renewed, or they need to get their go through the process of figuring out how to, if they're suspended or temporarily suspended, how to move that process along, or if they are having issues with the labor and industry, or the Department of Revenue when it comes to taxes, labor and industry when it comes to things like unemployment issued not being issued properly, things like rent rebate, which is a big thing for many of our
Yeah.
seniors and folks
Yeah.
with who may have a disability or who are on Social Security disability, to make sure that they can get those resources back to them. And then, so any state-related department we can assist with to kind of fast track that for you the best that we can, to sort of run some interference if you're having any delays. But then also, we can be an advocate for things that are happening specifically and locally in our communities, right? So when there's
Okay.
like development that is being proposed in the West End, whether that is around like housing development or commercial development or retail development or mixed use development, many of the folks who are doing the development, those developers, are going to need tax breaks from state government to be able to afford to do those development projects, or they're going to want for some tax incentives or some grant money from state government, or they're going to need me as their state, as a state representative who represents those areas, to sign off and give them letters of support for that development project. And what I can do is I can say, we want responsible development in our communities that doesn't displace folks. So how does your development fit within that? How does your development fit within what the community says they want to see
Yeah.
as far as development? What the community benefits will be as far as once your development is complete, how many jobs will people from that community be able to have access to? How many jobs will people from that community be able to have in terms of during the construction and pre-construction? Right. So these are all questions that I will ask, and if these answers aren't good, then I'm not signing off on it. I'm not writing any letters of support. I'm not approving any state grants or any state tax credits. I'm not doing that unless I have folks like you and other community folks in the West End that say we want this project. And if you come to me and say, Aerion, we don't want this project, then I'm going to stand up and tell the developers the community says they don't want this project. So you're not getting any state resources. And so we can
Yeah.
stand up and be an advocate on your behalf, because at the end of the day, they're going to want us to bless the project, but we're not going to bless the project unless you all bless the project. So that's a way that we can be helpful. There are some limitations that we do have in terms of um, like purview over like city responsibilities. So we all know that there's different levels of government: federal, state, and local, city and county. And so when people kind of call my office and say, hey, the trash isn't getting picked up in my neighborhood, or the snow isn't being plowed on my streets, or we got potholes, by all means, you can call my office. We can have a conversation about that. But if you're in the West End, I will have myself or one of my staffers call over to Teresa Kale Smith's office, who is a city council person currently, to say, hey, Teresa, I'm getting calls about trash, snow removal, and potholes. We need you to help the constituents to take care of this. And so I don't get to sign off and force the city to do that,
Yeah.
but we can put pressure on them to make sure that they do take care of those things.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And so there's a couple things I want to comment on. One of them is, yes, Western Power, we are nonpartisan, but if you are teaching us something, please, by all means, do not hold back. That's why we are here, because like we were talking on, you had spoke on voting, making sure that we know that our listeners know how important voting is, because here at Western Power, we always say when you don't vote, you just voted. So I want to make sure that our listeners understand that. You also mentioned you said it starts January, and then
Oh,
is
sorry,
it January?
June 1st.
Okay, that's what I wrote down. I
June
wrote down June
1st.
30th.
June 1st
Go
is
ahead.
when budget sort of negotiations start with the Democrats and Republicans in the governor's office. And then technically we're supposed to pass the budget by June 30th. But every once in a while, some years we miss that deadline because people just can't agree on certain things, and then it
Yeah.
gets pushed back. But I always say a budget, even though our budget of $35 billion plus, a budget at the state level is similar, not the
Mm-hmm.
dollars, but the concept of it is similar to your own personal budget in your household. A budget is a statement of priorities. So when we spend more
Mm-hmm.
money on our criminal justice system than we do on our education, that just tells us what our priorities are, right? We don't have to spend more money on investing in prisons. We don't have to as government. We could spend more money on education, but the folks who are in power, mostly the Republicans, who control the negotiation table, that's what they want to spend on. That's what they're prioritizing, because they want to show their constituents that they're tough on crime. Right? That's why they want to do it. And so,
Yeah.
the budget season gets really like tense for folks, but again, that's why it's important to have folks who are in office who are going to really like fight to ensure that we get the resources in those line items of that budget to really deal with the issues that folks in the district really care about.
Wow. And thank you so much. And folks, you heard it here first. That Aerion, Rep Abney, is saying that his goal is to listen to the community. What do the community want? So please take that seed and let that grow and marinate with yourselves. And you also mentioned, I'm so glad that you brought up, what actually can you do and what actually you cannot do. And like you said, someone calls your office and say, hey, they haven't shoveled our street, the snow plow hasn't came on our street, and so I'm glad that that's another reason why we do these civic series, so our community know what office to call, who to call. And you have mentioned that you would, you have an open door that you will be able to contact Teresa Kell Smith, and she's another one that personally gives out her phone number. So, I want to say thank you so much for that, Aerion, because that's why we started, this civic series, to make sure that our community understands who to go to on what issues. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Two more questions.
Sure.
The first one is, why you? Why should someone say, what, I'm casting my vote for Aerion Abney?
Because I care enough to give a damn about people. Like for me,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't about me as an individual person,
Mm-hmm.
because people in politics and elected office, we come and go, right? But
Right.
I understand that while the time that I have in here, like people who know me and know my track record know that I give 110%, because I understand that, you know, Pittsburgh has been really good to me. Like I came
Mm-hmm.
here as a 17-year-old kid, not knowing anything, from the other
Yeah.
side of the state, and I was able to have a great education. Like I said, I have a master's degree in social work. I've been
Mm-hmm.
fortunate enough to have gainful employment. Became a first-time homeowner at the age of 25.
Mm-hmm.
I've built a good network. I met my wife here, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm raising a family here. I've a 2-year-old son and a 7-month-old son, and so Pittsburgh
Yeah.
has been really, really good to me. And I feel like this is really an extension of me using my opportunities and my platform, my position to give back to a city that has given so much to me. And so I care about this stuff. Like this is really where my heart is. When folks, try to tell me like you don't want to go into politics, you don't want to go into social
Mm.
work, one, because you're not going to make any money, and then they told me you definitely don't want to go into politics because nobody likes their politician. And I'm like, I don't do it for likes. I'm not doing it because I want people to like me. If I was doing it I want people to like me, I would have went and did something completely different. And I would have went into
Yeah. Yeah.
professions where in my professional career, I would have made 3 times as much money as I made. But at the end of the day, you know, I I want to see people really have better living conditions. I want to see people's quality of life really get better. And that's not to say that anybody else doesn't want that, but my
Hmm. Hmm.
career has really shown that. And I tell people all the time, you know, there's no such thing as a one person army. Just because I'm an elected official and I'm the state rep, I can't do this by myself. You know,
Yeah.
it takes all levels of government to work together. It takes people in the community to work together with me. It takes our business
Hmm.
community, our faith-based community, our nonprofit community, our banking institutions to all come together to make this work. And I'm not going to be as successful as I want to be as your state representative without having that open door policy with you all, without understanding
Hmm.
what really happens in the West End when I'm not
Yeah.
physically there, right? Because the West End looks different in the daytime where I may
Yeah.
be having my satellite office hours than it does at nighttime. And I need to know that.
Yeah.
And because if I don't know that, I don't know how to accurately go to Harrisburg and bring back the resources to address those issues. And so I'm just as dependent on you all and the people in your
Hmm.
community as you are depending on me to do what you need. Because in order
Yeah.
for me to be successful and get you what you want, you have to communicate with me and I have to communicate with you.
Yeah.
You are essentially, you hire and fire your elected officials with your vote, right? You are our bosses. We work for you.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it is not common that anybody who is a boss and has employees to only check in with their employee once every 2 years or once every 4 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We are what you are
Yeah.
going to expect to engage with us on a regular basis so you know what's happening in Harrisburg and vice versa.
Hmm.
We know what's happening in the district so that we can merge the two and we can work in one accord. And so that's why I thank you for doing this. And I want folks to know who are watching this that you can contact me. I mean, you know this personally, Terri, because we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
available. I'm available. And I want why me again, because I care enough to give a damn, but because
Hmm.
I want to be good at this job. I really want to be, and
Yeah.
I need you all in order for me to be able to do that.
Yeah. You touched on so many very important points, Aerion. The first one that stands out to me is that you know, no politician can do it by themselves. And you hit on all of them. You hit on the nonprofit sector. You hit on the churches. The religion sector. You hit on the community sector. You hit on your coworkers. So that's how a community builds and grows, and we will be able to see that. And so yes, and it's very important that what else you said is that you're not everywhere. You know what I'm saying? But what we hear is that you are open to hear, like, this is what happens after 5 in our community, or this is what happens when you're not there in our community. So I want to really, really say thank you so much for that. And I'm so glad that you didn't say how to get in touch with you, because my next question is, if someone wanted to, I was like, oh my goodness, he ready to answer my next question. But yeah, my next question, Arion, is, how can someone get in touch with you? Maybe they want to, have this conversation with you that we are having, or maybe they have questions of their own that they may want to ask you. They may want to volunteer. They may want to donate. How can someone get in touch with you?
Yep. So they can, our phone number, they can call us on the phone. So, um, 412-339-0201. Sorry, I had to close my eyes to remember it. 412-339-0201 is a number they can call to reach me. That goes to me directly. I'll answer that. Or they can leave me a voicemail or shoot me a text message. They can find us, our website is votearionabney.com. They can check us out on all major social media platforms. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I often
Mhm.
check my inboxes on all three of those to respond to people. And then,
Mhm.
if they don't feel comfortable doing that, they can reach out to you and you can get a hold of me because you know how to get a hold of me multiple ways, and there's other folks who know how to get a hold of me. And so I just encourage folks to reach out to me, and above that, I encourage folks to vote. I mean, you talked about this earlier, that you encourage folks the importance of voting in and out of election, whether it is a presidential election or whether it is a local election. We need to be encouraging people to vote both in and out of election seasons. Even during the summertime, we need to be talking about this, because one little thing that I will just point out there, and not every politician or elected official is this way, but there are some who are like this, is that what happens a lot of times the day after an election, what every elected official does is they look at the numbers, right? It can be very data driven. They see which neighborhoods, which communities, which wards and precincts turned out the vote. And oftentimes there's a correlation between the districts that vote often. Can you hear me? Teresa, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can now. I don't know what I hit on my computer. I'm sorry. Please go back to yes, please go back to the right after election, because I hit something. Yes. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
No, you're good. So what happens? Elected officials, again, this is not all of them, but there are some. But so the day after the election, you look at the numbers, the data. Where did voters turn out? Which communities had the highest turnout? And there often is a correlation between high voter turnout and once people get in office, the amount of resources that go into the community and the amount of attention that the community gets. Because remember what I said earlier, you all as voters, you get to hire and fire us. And so a lot of elected officials, they look at, okay, in order for me to keep my job, I have to make the people who vote the most happy. And so the communities who don't vote the most, the politicians may look at it like, well, I don't have to give them as much attention because they're not going to vote anyway. I have to give the attention to the people that vote the most. And so it creates this cycle of people who don't vote feel like nobody pays attention to them and nobody invests in them, but they don't always understand is that happens because you don't vote, right? And so when you start to see an uptick in the voter block and the voter turnout in certain neighborhoods, then the elected officials start paying attention, like, Wind Gap or Chartiers or Sheridan, wow, this is the most that people in that neighborhood voted in 10 years. Oh, I better pay them attention. I better, when they ask me for something, I better respond to them, because if I don't, they're going to organize over there. They're going to get more people to turn out to vote, and they're going to end up voting for my opponent in the future, right? And so it's just sort of, it's the politics of things. It's unfortunately, a lot of people view it as a numbers game. And so a lot of the resources, once people get into office, goes to the areas where the numbers say that's where more people are going to vote. And so that's why I just encourage people, don't take your vote for granted. You may feel like today you're not getting the attention and the resources, but you're only continuing to hurt yourself in the future, because that's how you get responses to your needs, is by going out and showing a large number of people in your community turn out to vote.
Wow. You know what? That is so true. And it brought up so many memories, because I'm going to tell you something. It had to be about 10 years ago. It had, if not more. The very first person who ever said that to me is our council president. She said, we don't vote. We don't vote. And so when we ask for things, we're not going to get them. And that stuck with me. Like, so they look at them numbers. I'm so glad you brought that up, Aerion. They look at them numbers. They look at the communities that vote. And that's what the elected officials do. They say, this is where I have to give this money or attention to, because this is who comes out to vote for me. So I want to say thank you so much for bringing that up. Thank you, because please, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't take anything else from our conversation today, please take that seed and let that marinate. And so, Aerion, we're ready to wrap it up. I want to, again, thank you so much. But before we go, is there anything else that you would like to say?
Yeah, I will just again thank you for creating this platform and having me in forum for this forum, and for the folks who are in the West End that will see my name on the ballot. I just ask for your vote and support for my reelection, so that I
Mhm.
can continue to service the community, and have you all as be part of my district. I've knocked several doors in the West End already, so I've begun to meet some of the neighbors. But I'm looking forward to meeting more of you, coming out to the community events, hearing about what you care about, what your issues are, and being a champion for you. And so, I just ask again for your vote and your support on May 17th. To continue to serve as state representative for the 19th district. I will greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Aerion. And I wanted to comment on before, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you heard what he said when he calls me Teresa. I know he still calls me Teresa. And so, Aerion, I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening, educating us, and just being present so people can know who you are and what you stand for. So, ladies and gentlemen, there we have it. Please again, follow us on Facebook at Weston Power, at Instagram. Our new Instagram page is at Weston Power. Our Twitter handle, our YouTube channel. Please follow and subscribe. Again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Rep Abney. And with that, we're going to say good night, folks.